Jen's gonna jump over here and hit this button. So
Good to go.
Everything goes together. Thank you, Jen.
You are welcome.
Welcome to our class. Thanks for joining us in the community classroom. And I'm Amy Karanik. I'm a Sculpey brand ambassador. I'm really pleased to be here with you today. We're going to make trim the tree with Sculpey III. So 3 different styles of Christmas ornaments that are all made with Sculpey III. And here's what they look like. Sculpey III is a great clay for working with beginners or with children because it's really soft and squishy. So that's what we've chosen to do here. These are Thumbprint snowmen, and they have really soft white little bellies and bodies. And the point is that a child, or with your help, could impress their fingerprints in the little parts of their bodies. And then we're going to make this slab style snowflake ornament, which is so trendy and popular right now, slab designs. And this is a stacked Christmas tree. It's articulated with jump rings, which gives it a little movement. And so without further ado, let's jump in and we're going to make the snowmen first. So I'll get these guys out of my way, put my glasses on. We're just going to make one of these today, but I've got 3 here because I want to show you like some different scarf styles. I'm going to try to give you some good tips and tricks that you might not otherwise get on the PDF instructions, which will be on the Sculpey website. So to make one of these guys, you need 1/4 of the block. Now Sculpey III is divided into 4 equal sections. It's extruded through a machine that makes those great lines on there. So 1 snowman equals 1 of these sticks, and then we're going to use a little bit extra, and I'll show you how to embed a hanger in the back of your little snowman with just a little extra. So from 1 block of Sculpey III, you'll have the ability to make 3 snowmen. So first off, what we're going to do is make this little backing, and maybe you can't see it so well, but there is a little layer of extra clay on the back, and that's where we're going to hide our hanger, so that when he comes out of the oven, because Sculpey III needs to be baked to make it permanently cured, when it comes out of the oven, it'll be ready to hang. So I just have this little flat piece of white, and then atop that, I'm going to put a little flat piece of black so that the black blends in with his little hat and the white blends in with his little body. And I'm just making sort of a big upside down exclamation point. Next, I'm going to take one of these eye pins, and all these accessories are available at Michael's. We've got all the little part numbers listed for you in the supply list. And a good way to bend like a nice loop in the bottom is just to take this tool, which is from the clay tool starter set, and just kind of loop that eye pin around it. And what we're doing is creating a secure hanger, and the hanger gets embedded in the clay, like so. Now leave that little eye sticking out the top, give yourself a little room up there so that later you have a little pin that you can hook the ribbon on with. So this just makes a super easy hanger. Next, I'm going to take my 1/4 block of the white Sculpey III, and I'm just conditioning a bit. Now, if you've never used Sculpey oven baked clays, they need to be a little bit hand conditioned just to get them smooth and get them working well, and just to get them ready to go. And so what I'm doing is just forming a little log like so. And then I'm going to section my log. I want a bigger piece for the bottom of the body, which would be this part down here. And then the 2 other pieces, the head and the middle, those are pretty similar in size. So I've divided my piece of clay into 3 pieces, a bigger one and 2 smaller ones. And then I'm going to roll these into sort of little ovals. I'll put the big one down here, and then a middle one, and then another of the same size up here at the top. Now you want to leave some of that black sticking out the top. That's where the hat's going to go. And if you're happy with that position, then all you have to do is push them down into place. Now this is the cute part where you could totally document someone's precious little fingerprints, because this clay is really soft and squishy, and it will take the fingerprint right into it. So there's I'm using my thumb for the bottom, and then let's use a different finger for the middle and another finger for the face. Oh, and I got a little green there, but I think we'll be able to cover that up with this hat brim. So there's how you can capture a little person's fingerprints forever in the clay. How cute is that? Next, I'm going to take some more black, and you just want to proportion out your clay so that it seems, you know, the right size to the base piece that you already have made, the body. And it's going to kind of vary. Like if I was doing this with my grandbaby, I would probably make my snowman a lot smaller because she's really little, and I'm hoping to make this with her. And then I would want to proportion the hat, you know, to match her size. But at any rate, make kind of a little rectangle with the black, and then stick that on the top, but make sure that little eye is sticking out, okay? And then I'll take a little bit more black. And the great thing about this is that you can always add to the lump or take some away from the lump just to make it all fit and to be all very proportionate. Now I'm going to roll this into just like a flat little rectangle. And this seems like it's kind of too long, so I'll just trim the ends. And then I want to put this across the bottom of the hat right where it meets up with the head. And make sure this hat brim is kind of nice and flat, because later, after we've baked it, we can go back and write someone's name across the hat band, provided that it's, you know, nice and fairly smooth and flat. All right, now moving on, I want to get the eyes in there before I go too far. So a good way to do eyes is to first poke a hole. And I'm using this blunt pointed tool that's from the clay tool starter set. And I'm kind of rocking it around to make bigger eye sockets. And then I want to make some little eyeballs to just fill that space. It's good to use a wipe or a paper towel, you know, to clean up your tools between colors. So next I want to make 2 little eyeballs and just plop them down into those little sockets. Now they don't have to go all the way down in there, but I find that if you provide a little eye socket, you can make a cute little round ball that will just stay in place. It doesn't even have to be flattened. It can just sit in there like that, and it's really, really, really cute. Excuse me, I got something stuck to me. All right, next let's address the scarf. And I'm focusing on this style scarf here, although I will show you how to do some others. So for the red and the green, we just want kind of equal amounts. And I'm just using the knife that comes in the clay tool starter set. And I'm going to clean up my mess just a little bit. Just squeeze this a bit, and you can roll this into a little tiny rope. I'm going to move my guy over so that I can, and as I'm moving him, see how that eye pin is now stuck inside there. So I'm going to roll this into a little rope. Just visualize making a scarf for this guy that would be, you know, proportionately about the right size. And then make your second rope, which is going to be my red, make it equal in size. Let me try to get more in the middle. I'm working on a silicone baking mat from Sculpey because it protects my table, and the clay won't stick to it. The clay won't harm it. It's just really a really good work surface for doing clay, and it peels up real easy from the work surface so that you can put it away. Now I'm going to stick these 2 ropes together, and I'll trim them so they're the same length. I'll grab each end of the rope and then just twist it like this. So I'm twisting my left hand away from me, and if I want, I can twist the other hand toward me, or I could just go down the length like this. Now this kind of a little scarf, this reminds me of like a big fat chunky crochet scarf. It's just kind of lumpy and bumpy. I think it's really cute. And I think this is great for a child's craft. or for a whimsical tree. Now what you can do is just pick up your little guy and put the scarf right behind that little crack that's between his head and his body. And I'm being really careful not to push out all those precious fingerprints, because if you're doing this with, you know, a child in your family, you might want to preserve those. And I'm just looping this over, and then I'll trim it with my little knife. And I'm also positioning my scarf so that whatever I do have there of a fingerprint is, you know, still visible. I'm not covering the fingerprints up with all my little elements. So, all right, next all we need to do is finish off. He needs a nose and some buttons. So for the nose, I'm going to poke another hole. And I'll grab a little bit of this orange color. And here again, you just want to try to be proportionate. This is a little bit too big. Now to make the nose stick on really well, because these noses are supposed to look like carrots, and you can see how it sticks out away from his face. Well, that could be a place where that could break off easily if you don't mount it well. And so that hole provides a way for me to push the carrot into the face. So what I've done is I've made a carrot shape, but it's like carroty on both ends. It's pointed on both ends. And so what I can do is I can push one of the points into that little hole I made. And as I'm pushing it in, I can kind of shape the tip that's sticking out like so. But having that hole in the face makes for a better, you know, a lot more surface area that the clays can stick together, and it makes a better connection. Now all we need is some buttons. So just take a little bit of the black clay and cut off some little balls for buttons. And again, let's put these in a place where they don't cover up that fingerprint too much. So I haven't done one over like this, so I'm going to push these buttons way over here. You could even write on the back of this, you know, the year that you did it, so you could remember how the age of the child when you know, made this little ornament. So this guy is ready to go in the oven. So I have an oven baking sheet right here, and I'll just lay him there. He'll go in the oven at 275 for 20 minutes. And when he's done baking, I'll still show you how to finish him off. But as promised, I want to show you a couple more styles for the scarf making. So you have quite a few colors here that we use to make the snowman, and it's super fun and easy to make all kinds of different scarves. And then that way they could be differentiated, you know, between whose snowman has the striped scarf and whose snowman has the red scarf, and you know, they could be more personalized that way. So let's do something really different and just add some white to this leftover rope, and we'll just twist that up. We'll make a really funky stripy scarf. And that's kind of how this green and white one is. And you can roll the clay and smooth it. You could use as many colors as you want. You can use your scraps in this way. Now I'm folding it and folding it again. And when you fold it and fold it again, then you get lots and lots and lots of random stripes. So it's a kind of a fun way to add some decorative elements. And like I said, to make each snowman, you know, truly individual. Now this one doesn't have that chunky woven look of the first one. Another thing you could do is you can make a flat scarf. So I could push down on it and make it, you know, flatten out, kind of like this red one. And that would give a whole nother look. So just a whole different type of scarf there. And even after you get it on the snowman, if you wanted to, you could score the ends and make it look fuzzy and cute on the end. All right, I'm going to set those guys aside in this extra scarf. Now, let's pretend I got that guy out of the oven. Ah, here's one that's all baked. Now, I've already attached a ribbon because I leave it to you. I'm really confident that all of you can add a ribbon to that little eye hook that we left exposed. And there it is in the back. You can add a jump ring if you want, or you can just thread your ribbon right through that eye pin. So now that it's completely done and it's cool, you want to make sure it's cool. I'm going to write a name on there with this pen, and this is a white paint pen. And so first thing I want to do is prime it just a bit and get all those blobs out of extra ink, because paint pens have a tendency, especially because I traveled today to do this, and so I find that when you're moving your paint pens around a lot, they kind of want to leak. So, but this paint is flowing really well. So now I can go to this black rim and write a name on here. And guess what name I'm going to write? Eily. That's my grandbaby's name. And now it's ready to go on the tree. And I think dating it is a really great idea, since it is a keepsake, and it'd be loads of fun to decorate your whole tree with everyone's fingerprints. Okay, next we're going to move on to the slab style snowflake. So let me clean up a little bit here from the Snowman guy, and I'll bring in my my new colors for the slab snowflake. This has a totally different look to it. It's got different festive holiday colors using blues and white. So first thing you want to do is get this clay going in the right direction. So I'm conditioning it by rolling it, and I just pick it up off my work surface and roll it some more. And as I'm rolling, it's getting thinner and thinner. Now, you'll notice that on the back, I've got quite a bit of cracking and little gaps, and that's completely natural because the clay has been sitting and not been played with in a while. So I'm getting all that worked out, and that's why we call this conditioning, just preparing the clay for a project. But the Sculpey III is really easy to use, and this doesn't take long at all. Okay. Now at this point, you can make this as thin as you would like. I would stick right around 1/8 of an inch for the thinness, because much thinner than that and it would be pretty delicate. So I'm saying about 1/8 of an inch thick. And then I'm going to grab a circle cookie cutter and just cut a shape out of the middle. Now I've written instructions for this, and in the instructions I've shown you how to turn this into a snowflake shape without a template, and I'm also going to show you how to turn this into a snowflake shape with a template. So this template is included in the instructions, and it has a 6-pointed snowflake, each with a radial line going through the arms, and then that is basically our circle shape. So you could position this on here if you want, and that would show each radial arm coming out from the edge. Or you can cut this out with scissors and position this on the top. I got a boo-boo in my clay, probably dropped something from my finger. You could put this on the top, and I'm just going to stretch my clay ever so slightly, because my template, I must have copied it a little too big, but that's okay. And then I'll just position this on top. Now, I find it super valuable to, if you want to make something realistic like a snowflake. Now, I know this isn't a realistic snowflake, but snowflakes are real things in nature. When I'm working a snowflake pattern, I always Google it and see, you know, what snowflakes actually look like and how the arms come out and how they radiate. And so that's how I achieved basically this finished design, was from looking up, you know, snowflake designs on the line. So I strongly encourage that. Now I'm using a 1-inch teardrop shaped cutter, and I'm cutting away, according to the template, these gaps. And this just makes a super easy way to turn a circle into a basic snowflake shape. Now, without picking up the snowflake, I'm going to use, you know what, I used the wrong one. I was supposed to use this bigger one, but that's okay. All snowflakes are unique, so that works. Now I'm using the edge of the cutter to go back and cut out these little points at the tip of each arm. Calling those arms. I don't know if there's a snowflake word for these things, but I'm calling them arms for the crystalline structure. Sometimes you see art of snowflakes that have 8 arms, and that really bugs me because I don't believe that's true. I think snowflakes have 6 arms. So I'm going to touch this one up just a little bit. All right, so there's your basic snowflake shape right there. Voila! And then if you want to, you could pull these points out just a little bit more and make them a little more dramatic, which I'm going to do. Excuse me when I get off camera. I apologize for that. And there we are. We're all ready. Now, one more tip I like to do. I'm just going to go back, and now that I have those points all mapped out, I'm just going to very lightly score right through the arms just to keep me on track as I'm adding the decorative elements to the top. Okay. Set that template aside, and we're going to insert another hanger like we did for the snowman. I'll just bend an eye pin in half, and then I can use this tool to really squeeze that little loop down. And I'm using some fingertip pressure too. So here's what we're going for, is basically a hanger that's going to get embedded in the clay. And we've got the eye over here, and then we've just bent a loop so that it can't be pulled out of the clay. And just position this right down the middle of one of those arms with that little eye sticking out. And then as we layer the elements on top, that's going to be embedded in there. So next we will work with the blue. And for the blue, I'm just going to pull off a little bit of this. We don't need a whole bunch. Let me figure out where to work so you can see me best. I'll scooch this over a little bit. So we need another flat sheet in this dark blue color. And I'm going to go for at least as thin as 1/8 of an inch. It could be even thinner this time because we have, you know, the support of this background piece to hold it all together. So you can go as thin as you want this time. And I'm going to use this same cutter, and I'm always keeping my little pattern there. Use that same cutter that I used before. This is the 1-inch cutter.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Can you show them on the cutter the side to use?
Yes, I sure can. That's a good point. So these cutters, first off, they come in a set of 6 cutters. That one goes there, and then there's this cute little tiny one. And they have a rolled edge on the top, and that is for the safety of your finger. And then they have a cutting edge on the bottom. Now, the cutting edge is sharp enough to cut through clay, but the rolled edge on the top is just for your comfort, for your, you know, for your fingers on top. So that's how they work. And like I said, there are 6 in that pack of teardrop shapes. So next, I'll just peel these up, and I'm going to position one down the middle of each arm. Now, this is where those little lines I scored in there, that's where these come in handy, because you can just position these teardrops so that the tip of the teardrop is out here at the point, and then basically the middle of the base of the teardrop is right in line, so that they're all aiming toward that center point. And this is a really popular style right now to do these layers of shapes and colors, and it just makes a really simple and pretty, you know, way to decorate. Okay, and then just fingertip pressure is enough to hold that all together. Okay, next we are going to use some white, and I'm just peeling a piece off of the snowman ornament that we had earlier. But this time we're going to add a little bit of glitter. to our white just to make it stand out. And also I just want to show you how you can use glitter or mica powder or chalks with oven baked clays, and it just adds a whole nother dimension of texture and shine. So I'm rolling this little sheet, and this is this is thinner than 1/8 of an inch, probably closer to a 1/16. And I have some iridescent glitter, and just sprinkle some of this right in the middle of the clay, and then spread it around with your fingertip. Now the glitter will stick to the clay and add a little shiny element. Another trick for white clay, because it's so easy to stain white clay with other colors, is that the glitter actually acts as a barrier that won't let you stain the clay. Like if you had extra colors on your fingers, the glitter makes a really nice barrier and won't let you transfer color onto it. So next I'm going to use this tiniest little cutter that comes in the set, and I'm going to cut out 6 of these. And I'm just making sure I get it all from that glittery area, and then I'll peel the scrap up and set that aside for now. And then I'm just picking these up, and I'll position one in the bottom center of each of the blue pieces. Jen, can you tell me how we're doing on time?
It's 5:27.
Oh, we're doing great. Okay, just keep positioning these the same way. Symmetry is very important when you're making a snowflake. And so you want to make sure you do each one as close to the same as you can. Always putting it there in the bottom. And then guiding the tip right up toward the middle. Okay, now I'm going to take some of this sparkly white glitter clay, and I'm going to roll this into a little ball. And I'm going to put that right in the middle. I think that's a little too big. I like to make it into a ball, even though I'm flattening it down into a pancake, because the pressure of me flattening it is what helps it connect to the base. Okay, so there's my little pancake center. Now I have the basic structures all in place for the design. Now comes the fun part that I call the doodling part. And this is just adding more and more. You know what, let's do the light blue first, and then I'll come back to the blue. It's just adding more and more detail, and that the detail is a key element to this slab technique, where you create these layers of color and texture, and then you go back and add a lot of really cool details and doodles. All right, so I'm going to set these little light blue areas in place. And so the way I want to do that is I'm going to use my ball-ended tool to make a little seat for them, like this. Just tapping in a little well for those to sit into. And kind of like that carrot nose that we put on the snowman, that creates more surface area, which helps the clay stick to each other better. So these are just some good construction techniques. These pieces I'm cutting a little bit smaller, rolling them into balls, and then setting them in those little wells. And now I've gone left-handed on myself. A lot of times I go both-handed, but okay. There we go. Those are all in place. Okay, now if you look at the finished piece, I actually have highlighted these little detailed areas with some silver paint after baking. And I want to prepare these for the silver paint by making them have little wells. That makes a nice flat spot for me to put the silver paint later. So I'm flattening those out again with the ball-ended tool. All right, the last part of the clay design is the little blue, the darker blue details that you see. So first I roll a rope, and this is just a method that suits me. As you work more and more with clay, you're going to come up with working techniques that make it easy for you. And so if I want a bunch of little balls that are approximately the same size, what I do is I roll a rope that's as even as I can get it, and then I cut, this is going to be my scrap, but I cut little pieces off of that incrementally, and that gives me the same volume of clay in each piece. So I need 12 of these to go around the middle. I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And what I do is I get kind of a rhythm to my cutting so that they all kind of come out, you know, about the same size. There's a lot of little tiny ball rolling in clay work, which gives it kind of a relaxing, you know, quality. Kind of like how my mom, my sweet mama, loves to do Zentangle. And I think that's because it's such a relaxing thing. And this is kind of like that. It's kind of doodling with clay. So now I'm putting some in between. So I started out with the first sticks right on those radial arms, and now I'm just dropping one right in between each one, and then kind of, whoo, that one got away from me, touching it up like so. All right, now I want to make sure those stay in place before I move on to the next design element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the blunt-ended tool, and I'm just going to poke a hole in them. And as I'm poking, I'm adding pressure to the clay that's helping it bond with the clay behind it. And I'm adding this little design element. So it's super, super simple. But when you put all these simple pieces together, it actually, you know, it kind of looks more complex. All right, I'm rolling it a little thinner because I want my design elements out here on the arms to be a little thinner. So trying to get my little blue rope all the same thickness, I'll cut my scrap off the end. And I'm going to put 3 little dots of the blue on each of the 6 arms. So now I need 18 of these. Okay, and then we'll just roll these up. I'll just put that first one off each point first, off of each of those blue dots. I love these blue colors. It looks really clean and snowflakey, if you can say that. And then I'll go back and put 2 on each side. Of that first one. So the first one makes a little placeholder for the design, and then these 2 kind of sandwich it. The fork truck. Can you guys hear the fork truck? All right, so there's those elements. Now these ones are going to get some more of that silver paint. So I'm actually going to use a smaller tool like this small-ended paintbrush and just sit those down, creating that little well that after the ornament is baked will receive that little bit of silver shiny paint. Let's flatten those right down. Okay, next I'm going to double check my ornament. Okay, I also have a series of silver dots like right here. I've got 6 of those, so we'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I have a series of little dashed lines around the legs that I'll use this tool for. And then I have a series of lines out here. But this is all about doodling and just adding really layers and layers of simple design patterns with very simple strokes and very simple pokes. Anyone can do that. Okay, then the final element is all the teeny tiny stitches. They look, it almost looks like, I don't know if you can see all those little bitty dots around the edges. Almost makes it look like it's sewn. And that's just another element that is part of this whole slab design process. I'm going to use this needle tool to poke pricks along here. And here. Okay. Now that is ready to go into the oven. And one of the beauties of this clay mat that I'm working on is I can just slide my hand under here and peel it up. That's going to go on my baking sheet. And there's that little snowman. We'll just put it right there. And when that's completely cool, it will look like this. Now look how hard Sculpey III is when it comes out of the oven. It's now permanently fixed and ready for some decorative details. I went ahead and put a silver ribbon on because I know that you can do that without me. And then what I'm going to do is just stipple on some silver paint. And this is a super shiny acrylic paint. And I'm using the end of my paintbrush.
Hey,
let me get a little more paint in my cap. Yes, Jen.
Can you talk about how the clay doesn't shrink?
Yes, good point. Did someone ask that?
Yes, they did.
Okay. So oven bake Sculpey III and all of our brands of oven baked clays do not shrink in the oven. They don't expand in the oven. Once you put it in there, it comes out just the same, but it just comes out all stuck together. So that is a really, you know, great way to work with a craft medium because you don't have to compensate for shrinking or expanding or any of that. It just, you know, the way you put it in is the way it comes out. So I find that to be very good because it's just one less factor of guesswork that one would have to consider when creating a project. So I'm dabbing with the end of my paintbrush, actually with the handle, little bits of silver into those flat areas that I made before it went into the oven. And that's just going to add a little more bling and shine. Other things you could do in this position is you could put heat set crystals. You could put a different color of glitter. You could put little type of glitter, Amy, you could put little beads. Glitter? So glitter is kind of hard to tell when you're going into it. I've been able to use almost all kinds of glitter, but a good way to test it is just sprinkle some glitter. This is from Michael's. It's called Creatology glitter. Comes in these tubes. Sprinkle some glitter on your baking pan, maybe on a piece of paper or something that where it won't stick to the pan, and just pre-bake it and test it at 275 for 20 minutes just to make sure. In my whole history of oven baked clays, I've run into probably 1 or 2 kinds of glitter that actually shrunk in the oven, which created a whole different look. But I would say for the most part, most glitter is going to work fine, but you can always test it so that you're not caught, you know, off guard if you get that one kind of glitter that doesn't work. So, all right, let's move on to our third tree trimming project, and that is the Christmas tree.
And can you talk about using gold and silver leaf? Because that's also
yes, yeah. So gold and silver leaf works really well with oven baked clay. And maybe Raina, could you maybe I can talk to the camera for a second about gold and silver leaf. So gold and silver leaf is actually compressed posite metal in super fine sheets. And what you want to look for is actually called composite leaf. So it's gold leaf that's not truly gold. I think it's made out of a copper base, silver composite leaf, gold composite leaf. Those are the things that are generally available in the craft store. You can get lots and lots of sheets in a little packet. Those work fantastic with oven bake Sculpey clays. The composite leaf will not tarnish by air once it's applied to the clay. And that's why I like to use it so much, because true gold leaf or true silver leaf, which you're going to pay a mint for, those will actually tarnish when left to the surface and left out in the air. So just do yourself a favor and get the inexpensive one, the composite leaf that's available at lots of craft stores. You just burnish it down on the raw clay, however you want it, and then stick it right in the oven. It bakes perfectly well. It bakes perfectly beautifully. And then when it comes out, it's just shiny and adds a whole nother element of bling to your design. So that was a really good question. All right, back to work. Now we're going to make this Christmas tree ornament. And this is kind of a cool ornament where we've actually used jump rings to make like a wiggly tree. So it's going to have a lot of movement on your tree. And I want to show you how to make this. Also, if you compress these tree pieces back together, you can see that has a really, really pretty, unique design on it. And this is called a mirror image technique. Some polymer clay people call it the Natasha technique, because a person named Natasha figured this out. And so we like to give credit where credit is due. So to make this little Christmas tree, we're going to start with another 1/4 block of white. Now, it's really important for this tree that you work the clays in the order that I'm telling you, because the white and the red hot red color that we're using, they like to get together and make pink. And pink is wonderful, but maybe you don't need some pink on your tree. I don't know, you might want pink on your tree, and that's wonderful. But for this project, I want to show you how to not get pink on your tree. Is that my friend Laquita? Is that Laquita Carter up there? I can see the name Laquita, so I know a person named Laquita. I hope that's her, or I hope I'm glad. Thank you for joining, Laquita. Okay, so I'm rolling this one. It's a 1/4 bar of white, and I'm rolling it into a little fat rod. Okay, and then I'm setting it aside, and I'm not touching it again for a little bit. And you'll notice me wiping my hands all the time with a baby wipe or with a paper towel. So next, I'm breaking off. This is tan. And I'm going to break this 1/4 bar in half, so it's really 1/8 of a bar. And I'll condition it real quickly with my fingertips. And then I'm going to roll this into a little rope that is about 4 times longer than my white rope. And also, I want it to be flat. So I'm going to flatten that down with my fingertip. So Jen, what is the time?
It's 5:44.
Okay. And next I'm going to move to the red. And I want about the same amount, about 1/8 of a bar of the red. Maybe a little bit more there because I broke it off crooked. And I'm going to condition my red with my fingertips, picking up all this red off the work surface. I'm going to wipe my work surface. I'm going to condition the red real quick with fingertips. And then I'm going to roll it into that really flat piece like I did the tan. So a long, long rope, about 4 times longer than my white log. And this technique I'm going to show you, the mirror image technique, is so applicable to many other ideas with clay, like jewelry making and bead making, and you can really have a lot of fun with it. I just adapted it to a Christmas ornament this time. Okay, look how the red kind of stained my work area. So I want to pick that up, and I'm just using a baby wipe, and I'm actually going to treat myself to a fresh one. I I reuse them and reuse them and reuse them until they're totally dry. Okay, now I want my hands really clean because I just did the red. Okay.
Move it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, is that the right way?
Yep.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so really I got to get that red cleaned off my hands before I touch my white log again. Okay, what we're basically going to do is we're going to wrap this white log in these colors. We're going to completely conceal the white up in the tan and the red. I'm even kind of going around the edges. So I'm putting a band of tan at, say, the 3 o'clock. See that? And like at 3 and 6. And now I'm going to go back and put a band of tan at, 3 and 9. And now I'm going to put one at 12 and 6. Okay. Next, I'm going to pick up the red and put it without really touching the white. I'm going to put the red in between those bands of tan. So I'm completely encasing the white so that it stays nice and fresh because I want my white to be white. And this piece, I'm just going to stretch it because it's not quite long enough. If I can just stretch it out with my fingertips. Okay. Now the white is just pretty much completely concealed inside the tan and the red. I'm going to clean up my area again. And then this is the fun part. So we roll this to smooth it. And then we start twisting it. And we want to roll it to smooth it and twist it until it's about, so if our original little log was about 2 inches, we want to go about 8 inches. Okay, then I bend this in half and I bend it in half again. And I'm going to roll again. I'm rolling it to smooth it and then twisting it. And I'm really compounding the stripes, you know, that are there. Now this is kind of a big ornament. So I think you could, if you wanted to, you could really tame down the amount of clay you use and it wouldn't have to be so big. Now what I'm doing is I'm just using my fingers to finesse this guy into a triangle shape. And I just keep working with it until it gets more and more triangular. But it's still quite thick. If you look at it from the side, you can see that that's pretty thick. It's probably at least 1/4 of an inch thick. And that's what we want. Now the bottom doesn't have to be this wide. It only has to be, the bottom of my triangle only has to be half the width of the tree. So it's not important that I get this spread out further. It's at this point, it's just a really skinny and narrow triangle. Okay, but keep it thick so that what you can do is stand it on its edge, and I'm gonna have to orient this to my face a little better so I can cut it. I'm standing it on edge. You can see how thick it is. And then you just want to take a clay blade and cut down the middle of this. So do your best to divide this in half. And let me move so the camera can see that I am right down the middle. See that? Okay. But I have to kind of rock it toward me so I can see what I'm doing. And then you're going to cut this in half, cutting the triangle in half. And my clay is really warm, so I'm having a little trouble. I got to orient this to me better. Okay. So then when you open this up, see that beautiful pattern that's duplicated on both sides? There's your mirror image. And I just think that's really cool. It's a great way to use scrap clay. It's a great way to make neat patterns that people will be like, how in the world, you know, did you make that pattern? And it will never come out the same way twice. Each and every time you do this, it's going to come out a little bit different. And I'm just using my fingers to really smooth that. And then I'm going to smooth it out with my roller. Now we also have a template that goes with this project. And here's what it looks like. So I'm aiming for my tree to be, you know, roughly that size right there. Okay. Now what you can do if you want to is you can trim this so that you have some, you know, kind of neater edges on here on the outside. And isn't it cool how the white was just stuck all in there? You couldn't even see the white until you cut it open. And then there's the beautiful pristine white because it was inside those other colors. Okay. Now, next, let's take a break from that and make just a little trunk for our tree. And you just want to cut off enough clay to make, you know, basically, look how different these two look, but still they're the same technique. I just want to make like a little trunk that's kind of, I don't know, is that a trapezoid maybe? I'm not sure what that shape is. So let's make a little trunk shape and then cut that with your knife tool. Just something, you know, that complements the size of your tree. And then we're going to take just a little bit of red here. And I'll show you how to make a star. So the way I make like kind of a wonky little freehand star is I start with a ball of clay. And then I kind of flatten it into a thick pancake like that. Okay, then I take one of my tools that has sort of a skinny tool, like a needle tool or something, and I just push little petals, for lack of a better description, into the side. And I want to push 5 of those. And it could take, you know, some practice getting the hang of having those kind of equally spaced, but you can do it. And of course, it doesn't really matter if they're not perfect because it still looks really cute. Then what I do is I pull these little petals out between my thumb and forefinger to make the star shape. And then as I'm pushing, I'm pulling them out and then I'm kind of flattening them. And there's the 5th one there. This is kind of the way I make starfish too. So they look kind of cartoony and cute. Okay, there's the star. And then what we need is a big hole in the middle of this star because that's where the ribbon's going to go. So I'm using this blunt point tool and I'm swirling it around in there to make the hole bigger. I'll push that through to a thicker part of the tool and then I'll turn it over and push back through the other way because that's what makes a neat hole. Okay. And then I want my star to be glittery, so I'm going to add a little bit of glitter to him. I'll just turn my star over and just dip it in that glitter. So he's nice and frosty looking, just for fun. If you wanted to, you could glitter the whole tree. Okay, so that's ready to go. That's ready to be baked, the little star. So I'll put that on my tray. And then the tree, if you want to make it wiggly like this, you could just leave it the way it is. But if you want to make it wiggly, what we would do is cut the tree in half, and then in half again, and then in half again. Now, the way I made it wiggly and articulate is to use jump rings. And so I have this little assortment of jump rings, and I'm just going to pick out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jump rings that are all the same size. And because the tree is kind of thick, all you have to do is push that jump ring in there about halfway and then pinch the clay around it. Okay, and then do the same thing up here at the tip. Jump rings have this little gap in them that you can open for jewelry making. And so I'm pushing that little gap in just so that the little gap doesn't show. We don't need to open these rings. They'll be permanently inside the clay. So there I have two little joints. And Jen, are we getting close on time?
5:55.
Okay. So instead of you watching me how to put all those jump rings in like that, please know that I would put another one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here. And then my whole tree would go, once the jump rings were applied, it would go in the oven on the baking pan. But I really want to show you how to assemble it once it comes out of the oven and it's completely cool. It has those jump rings baked right in. So here's one I made earlier. I used a huge jump ring to connect the star at the top because I went right through that hole in the star. And then you can see the jump rings all baked into place there. And then all I have to do is just take some pliers and take smaller jump rings and open them up like this. And then it's just a matter of hooking the pieces together like
and Amy,
so.
Can you talk about the right way to open a jump ring in case people haven't worked with them before?
Yeah, so if you've never used jump rings work like, and that, oh, I've threaded it through the wrong way. Anyway, jump rings are a circle. They're a circle and they have a gap in one edge. And if you turn the jump ring this way, you want to open them side to side. You want to open them side to side and then close them side to side. You don't ever open them by stretching them like this. You don't stretch jump rings because then they won't spring back. But if you open them side to side like that and then back, they will go right back together like so. And that's how you do it for jewelry making as well. So this little guy would just need to be connected with jump rings in the middle like this one. And then you just want to add your ribbon through the star at the top, and that would be ready to go on your tree. So Raina, if you could focus on my face, I would like to thank all of you for coming. Thank you so much for joining me in the community classroom and for Trimetry with Sculpey III. Next month, first week in December, we're going to teach gift wrapping and card making with liquid Sculpey products. Super fun class. Please come back and sit in on that one as well. And if we've inspired you at all to make some Christmas decorations or some holiday festivity, please remember when you post to social media or online, use hashtag make it with Michaels and hashtag how do you Sculpey. And then that way we can see what you all are making as well. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you in December.